Hey, everybody. Thanks for jumping on today. We have an exciting one here. The co-founder of Sagan Passport, specializing in global talent acquisition and remote workforce management. We have John Matzner. John is a former U.S. State Department operative focusing on counterterrorism and weapons of mass destruction. He leads a 100% remote team with 94% of his employees based outside the U.S. His hiring philosophy prioritizes coachability, energy, and intelligence in team members. And John, thanks so much for taking the time today.
Happy to be here, proud to serve.
Great. Yeah. I mean, remote talent is one a lot of people have questions on. So, it's a big episode for a lot of folks with a lot of questions.
You said 94%, and I actually have no idea if that's right. It's a lot. I like 94% though, because it makes it feel like it's accurate. It's like classic, like, internet, like we increased COGS by 48.2%. And it's like, I don't even know what that number is. But yeah, 94%. That sounds about right.
I think, yeah, it sounds right to me. I mean, look, that came from our pre-interview research
Oh,
here, but
I
when
made
you
it
think
up.
about it, 94% sounds like a great number to me too. But I think overall, a lot of folks today, they have the question on remote talent overall and global talent. So walk me through the last 4 years and what's changed coming out of COVID and how you kind of see it from your angle in the industry.
Globalization of white collar work is going to have the same impact as globalization of manufacturing in the early 1990s. It is going to have the same transformative impact. And over the next several years or decades, doing your bookkeeping in Southern California is going to be just as crazy as building a car in Southern California. And what has unlocked that, what opened Pandora's box was primarily COVID, but it also has to do with a lot of things that make it easier to do business globally. For example, when I first started, it was Fiverr.com and Skype. And now you have Slack and Zoom and Deal to Pay People and Upwork and onlinejobs.ph. And so the transaction costs of building a global team have fallen. And what that does is it's just proliferated it, just like building global manufacturing supply chains. There's going to be global white collar supply chains. And I think we're in like the second out of the first inning of that process.
Yeah, no, it's definitely for a lot of folks out there. They're starting to piece more of it together. We've done some hiring ourselves, and remote teams and domestic teams. There's definitely an ongoing blend there in terms of the workforce and how people approach it. For your team, what do you see customers think about remote work in the wrong way most times when they approach you? How do they come to you and you say, "Oh, you got it all wrong. You have it all backwards"?
These are two big things I see because I work with a lot of PE, I work with a lot of franchisors. Is the first thing is they think about outsourcing or they think about like VAs. And the person who wouldn't let you change your Southwest flight with broken English in what we call a white collar sweatshop. They're in a call center in India or the Philippines. They talk funny and they've got a headset on. That is not this, right? You pay some middleman who marks up their labor. That's not this. This is Beth, who, whether she could live in India or the Philippines, she could also live in Argentina, Dublin, Canada, or South Africa, and she works for you directly. And she is a member of your team who happens to live in another country. It's not like this weird second class citizen that's like, it's just like, dude, that's just Dennis. Is he in Fort Worth? No, I think he's in Mexico City. Oh, it's all
Doesn't
Slack
matter.
and Zoom,
Yeah.
right? So that's where people mess up is they have this, like their image of global talent is stuck in 1988, which is like AT&T call center. They only do level 1 support tickets and they make $1 an hour. And I'm like, dude, that guy's got a master's degree. He's smarter. We just hired a guy for a PE firm who builds LBO models all day from Columbia. He's got a CFA level 2.
Right. Specialized labor where, just because they're on Slack and Zoom, they're there when you need them, even though they're in a different time zone, different location.
They're just, the minute something goes remote, it can go global. That's basically the minute it's just an internet connection away now, especially with Starlink and the proliferation of high-speed internet outside capital cities. Like you get great people in El Salvador.
And how do you guys think about that? So, you're more of a master delegator than me. It's what you do professionally now. Apparently, 94% of your work is
I think
gone.
it's
So,
93%, but yeah, it's close.
yeah, who knows if you're actually doing any work?
Yeah.
But when you talk to folks, how do you, as a business owner, identify, oh, I need to hire someone there, and this is how I go about it now that you have such an expertise in it, right? Talk to the owner who maybe isn't as comfortable about identifying a role and how to offload some stuff from their plate.
First is kind of like tell me where the bad business touched you, which is just like, where's it hurt? Like, I'm not following up with any of our old leads. We don't have enough HVAC techs. Uh, I need B2B lead gen. I want to create more content on socials, and I'm sick of cutting up all the videos myself. So start with like what we're solving for, like where it hurts. At that point, if you're DIYing, right, or if you're working with us, we would talk to you about this, which is just like, how do we set the roll up in the right way and define the outputs so that you're setting somebody up for success? So, for example, a cold caller who also does bookkeeping is probably not the same person. So a lot of times people try to do these like Superman roles, and it's like, dude, just have somebody who calls your old leads in CRM. They'll pay for themselves 100 times over. You don't need them to do bookkeeping too,
Yeah,
right?
I've definitely made that mistake myself. I think in the US, especially in, more of the urban cultures, it's, hey, we're a startup, we're an aggressive company, we have, XYZ do 5 different things. But to your point, I mean, I think breaking up a lot of the different hyper specific roles is very helpful when thinking about building out what you can do here from a remote team standpoint.
It's because you're so used to your cost of labor being 10 times more expensive. And so you're like, I can't break even on the labor rate unless I give the front desk person at my yoga studio 87 things. And I'm like, yeah, dude, that's because you're doing California math, not global talent math. As somebody who had a metric shitload of W-2s in California, your break even is like, well, if they don't do this and this, and by the way, they also need to do this, I'm in my pocket. And it's like, brother, if they get you one extra roof a quarter, they pay for themselves. So stop doing
Yeah.
California math, start doing global talent math. The other thing, just to correct you, I don't think I'm a very good delegator. I think I'm a really good empowerer, which is something different. Delegation versus empowerment is the big difference there.
I agree. I like go into that a little bit. Talk about how maybe you run different areas of your company and how you think about empowering folks
Yeah.
rather than delegating.
Yeah. Uh, delegation to me, broadly speaking, is a low level. It's I tell you to do something and you go do it. And that's, see a target, shoot a target, right? And now I'm spending all my time. If people on this call have ever had an assistant, you're like, God damn it, I'm not keeping her busy, right? Because what you're doing is you're delegating. You're going, book me a flight, and then, okay, what do I do next, boss? Right? Instead of empowerment, and the way you empower somebody is you give them context and you give them an end state, i.e., the goal. And you say, Dennis, welcome. You're my new executive assistant. I'm busy. I own these 3 companies. Your job's to save me time. How exactly to do that in the beginning, I'll tell you, but over time, I expect you to be proactive and saving me time every day. Be creative, go. That's empowerment. Now it's not
Yeah.
like, what do I do next, boss?
No, it's a much different way of looking at it. And then from your perspective, you've worked with a lot of different kinds of companies. What kind of companies do you work with? Small, big, medium? What's kind of your focus been?
It's what I would
Or
say
kind of
is
a hodgepodge?
it's a hodgepodge. I mean, we have pre-revenue franchisees and we have a $4 billion mid-market private equity company. So what I would say is we work with people who are kind of like looking for an edge. Like we look for people who, doesn't matter if they're young, they're old, whatever. They're people who are like, I want to build my business better. It's not the people who think like portfolio ops is a cost center. There's somebody who's like, hey man, cost of capital's up. I got to get better. And it's like those people we work with, whether regardless of size, whether it's a $6 million solar installer or a big freaking roll up, and we hire their controller.
Yeah. And then, I mean, especially for folks that are kind of dipping into it, you mentioned a little bit, but can you give some broad numbers on how to think about the labor costs for business owners? Maybe not too specific, but just an overall from their perspective of running a company and how it can change
Yeah.
that.
So we have a guide if you want to see what roles are. I think it's salary.saganpassport.com if you want to see, and we've got like hundreds of data points there. It varies by region. Um, there's a range for every role, but I would say every company in the world needs who's doing more than $1 million a year needs 3 people from Latin America who make less than $1,500 a month full time. And they're good. They speak Spanish. They work your hours. They also speak great English. They're energetic. They're coachable. They're hungry. They can do everything from answer your phones to fix your CRM to make social media content for you to schedule your cruise. You just need a lot of those types of people. They're incredible, and they're the exact kinds of people that when I was trying to get them in Southern California as W-2s, they all had substance abuse problems. I was driving them
Yeah.
to AA and finding liquor bottles in the desk because I could not get that kind of like bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, I'm here to work. I can't wait to stay at the company for the next 5. I just couldn't get it. I tried.
Yeah, and it's definitely led you down this road in terms of finding this remote talent. To your point, it's a way of working with folks that you can leverage folks that are constantly on their computer and hungry versus folks that need additional help every day just to get to work, and helps run a lot more efficiently in that perspective. I think for some folks out there, maybe share some of your pains as you made your way into this remote hiring world, kind of mistakes that you've learned that you see from first time business owners as they try to figure it out for themselves.
Yeah. So I owned a home improvement company, grew really fast, struggled with what I would call entry and mid level white collar talent, particularly in California, because I never had any money. I was never venture backed. And so like people are like, oh, just get a chief of staff, $225,000 a year. And I'm like, you're high. You're high. Right. But I still have a shitload going on. And so I had to kind of be creative. And the way I was creative was, we got to the point in our home improvement company where we had in-house crews, we had 1099 sales reps, and 100% of everyone else was global. So our crew would come in the morning and we put a desktop computer in the warehouse, and we would have somebody in the UAE on Zoom who would walk them through the installations that day. And then she would hit print, and the printer in the warehouse would print out their job for the day. And then they would go walk to the truck, and she would see them in the GPS, and she would text the customer saying, hey, LSA is on his way to your house. Because I could not get somebody who I could afford to come in at 7 a.m. and brief my crews.
Right. And
So
that's a
what I would say the
truly,
mistake, oh, go ahead.
no, I was just saying a truly globalized workforce there. But to your point, it's a continuous sort of life cycle of that lead generation, scheduling, all that stuff together, and teams are sitting in different places in the world.
Yeah, it's anything that can be done. So what really unlocked this was COVID, right? Because it made people realize what percentage of the work, even at an HVAC company, can be done. So you think, oh, that's only for internet companies. You're like, uh-uh. Like because so think of it as like the point of the spear is your HVAC guy, but what percentage of his time is he actually wrenching? And what you can do is support that guy with schedulers and people to rework as leads and bookkeepers and digital marketers. And, we put GoPros on our crew. And when they got back to the warehouse, they would upload it, and then I would have it edited to make social every day because I didn't and that was all done globally, but my crew, all they had to do was just turn on a little GoPro, and I had all this great time lapse footage that I could use for socials. So it's just like, instead of I would say the mistake that people make is they think, oh, I'm in X, that could never help. And I'm like, do name an industry I've probably the most random shit you've ever heard of we've hired for.
Yeah, and I think that's another point too. Is it's really just to your point, identifying those problems up front and not just giving it to all one person. Right, one person's doing nine different things. Just take some time to separate those nine things out and give them to individuals, and that's how you can kind of tend to look at this. But then if they do go to hire, how can they work with you in general? Just give an overview of your firm, how you guys might work, and then we'll get to different geographies that you guys have worked with and different success
Cool.
stories there.
Yeah. So the classic way to do global hiring, which I just generally speaking disagree with, is the staffing markup model, which is I find you somebody for $7 and I bill them to you for $15. And I rebel against that because if I'm going to really bring a core capacity that's really ingrained in my company, I want it direct. I don't want to be going through a middleman who's not really adding much value, honestly, if any. And now, what if they raise prices? I have to ask them to give the person time. I'm going to have my head of operations be through an agency. What are you, nuts? But
Yeah.
I just don't believe it's concentration risk. It's
Sometimes they
just
make you
silly.
do daily reports for your folks. They know everything going on in your company. It's just a lot of
It's
interesting
just not
things.
the move. Just hire them
Yeah.
direct. So either DIY, which is fine. And if you want to DIY, really the only place that's easy to DIY is onlinejobs.ph for Philippines based hiring. I've done it. I recommend it. It's fine. You're going to have to kiss a lot of frogs to find a prince, but that's fine. Outside Philippines, it is not as advanced, and we have to get very, very. We do all sorts. We buy Facebook groups. We use influencers. We put notices up in churches to source outside of the Philippines. But what we do is we help you hire direct. So we have an annual membership. We can also do it on a one-off basis, depending on what your needs are, and we charge based on that. And then you hire that person directly. We have no ongoing economics on that hire.
Yeah. And then for those out there, what traditional kind of staffing firms, what they'll do is just put a basic margin over the top of the labor and charge that for you. and it can either be direct or through an agency, how those work. But there can be a lot of contracts involved and a lot of third-party risk. So there's a lot of unknowns there.
Third-party risk. Yeah, that was the word I
Yeah.
was looking for, not concentration risk. Thank you.
No, yeah, the third-party
I don't
risk.
care what
Look,
they say about you, Dennis. Yeah, it was a great point.
connecting the dots, I think, but yeah, it's look, it's something to think about when you're building a company is, great, you might sign all these new softwares or vendors or suppliers, but if one of them goes down, all of a sudden you have a big issue.
Correct.
Same thing can happen here. And then also to your point, that person asks off for a holiday or, sick day, whatever it might be, has to go through a different process than yourself. It's just a lot of
It's just,
tape.
I'll let that person like do my level 1 support tickets, maybe. But when we're talking about using it the way that I advocate using it, which is, our management team of a not small company is in like 11 different countries. What am I going to do that through an agency? Come on, get the fuck out of here.
Yeah. I think that would be another point for folks is, could you talk about how you designed your company in those different countries? You don't have to get specific, obviously, but just talk about areas of the world and kind of how you've thought about it, maybe different areas that you see interesting talent, so that when they come to you, they understand kind of where you source those from.
I don't mind being specific. I'm not, there's no like secret sauce. Like the thing that we do that's different than everybody else is smart, hungry, coachable, meaning given my background in the government, I worked a lot with the military. I don't, generally speaking, hire for skills. I hire for attributes and I give them the skills. And so I look for people who are very smart, who are very hungry, and are very coachable. Doesn't matter what country they're from. And I take that junior leader, it was like, GE's old management development program, and I make them in our company's image. And within 6 months, they're a pipe hitter. Instead of being like, must know the roofing industry and this software, I'm like, I can teach them the roofing industry in 3 days. What I can't teach is if they're smart, if they're hungry and they're coachable, and that talent lies everywhere. So just on our account executive team, it's led by a Russian with an El Salvadorian, a Nigerian, 2 folks from the Philippines, an Argentinian, and a Colombian. Like, because we just are looking for just bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, smart people. None of them had account management experience. That's just not that hard. Right. You know what's hard is being smart and being like, hey, here's Notion. Should we use that or ClickUp? Hey, can you go watch some YouTube videos and figure out how to build a Zap into Airtable? And they're like, yeah, because they're all smart. But like account management, it's like, dude, I don't know, Google it. Like how to deal with an angry customer. Like this fucking doesn't mean anything, right?
Yeah.
So we do attributes-based hiring. I think most people mess that up.
And it's especially true, especially now with AI. People talk about AI a lot and how to use it, but it does help people take a tremendous amount of information quickly and digest it, right? So you can have folks that are learning at a rapid pace, get a lot of information quickly, use that in different ways. It's just an interesting time with all this automation stuff.
We're doing, if I told you how much, we can talk about it offline, but we are doing hilarious amounts of, I used 20,000 Zap runs last year, and we use Make more than we use Zap, and we use Airtable more than we use both of them. We did 20,000 Zaps. I saw my bill last month.
I was going to ask you, because I've been ignoring Zapier for a while. I know I had to touch it, and later on, we built basically around Zapier, knowing it's an easy plugin for our backend stuff. And I looked at it last week off one of your tweets, but I know you use it quite a bit. So you're a big believer in automation. I know you're a zero inbox guy. That video you put up last week was disgusting. You had one email left in your whole box. But I think part of it too is you empower these folks with attributes that you've found, right? You give them an end goal that you'd like, and you're also giving them the tools to get there is an important part of it.
So the 3 things our team knows this, right? I've tweeted about this too. So it's like the leadership promise. From us, you get context and end state, resources and priorities. And in exchange, I never tell you how to do anything. I won't micromanage you. So I tell you where we're going. I give you resources, time or money, and then I tell you what to work on first. And in exchange, I don't ever tell you what to do. I'm like, I want to host a live event. If you need money, let me know. If you need to buy software, let me know. The goal is to maximize hires. Let me know if you need anything. I'm here.
Yeah. Have you ever run into problems with that? Obviously, there's been issues, I'm sure failures here and there, but how do you deal with some of the, let's shift the question. How do you deal with cultural differences, right? You have people in all different countries all over the world, different systems. When at times can it feel hard to manage this remote team?
There are issues with a kind of end state leadership philosophy like that. And that promise is in exchange for high performance. If that promise is broken, like I'm up their butt, right? So if they're not pushing the ball forward, working my priorities, working my end states, then they can't breathe without me commenting on the way they breathed until they've earned the right or they get canned. right? So that's kind of how you do it. Is that's a privilege to not be micromanaged. But if you're breaking that privilege because you drop the ball consistently, you're either going to get on the track or you're going to get fired. This is all Marine Corps stuff, if you like it.
Yeah.
It's
No,
all
I mean
military. Yeah,
it's definitely, I was never a Marine, but I know how you guys learn a lot about just a lot of how to empower large groups of people and large organizations quickly on time with process. So it's definitely a good way to approach it. And that's why, there's a lot of folks on our searcher side who are backed because they're military based and they just have
yeah,
that skill set.
yeah. I wasn't a Marine, but I just read their stuff because it's so good. So
No, yeah,
yeah,
I'm sorry. Point still stands. I was just saying, like, for folks that, we just talked to one an hour ago, and that's why. But he was,
cool.
focused in that space, and I feel like a lot of the searchers we've been coming across are Marine or
Yeah, it's sharp as
ex-Army or
shit. Yeah.
ex-Navy folks. But
Yeah, what is it? What's HBS is all Marines, McKinsey, and Mormons or something?
I mean, we were there for that. I was there for the HVS conference. There was a lot of ex-military. I mean, those folks
And
are.
a lot of Mormon dudes who are also killer.
You can never beat them
Love
when
me
I
some
were in.
LDS. Yeah.
Yeah, we interviewed an LDS guy who owns a pest control company, and he's a monster at knocking on
Dude, they're
doors.
incredible. They're
Yeah,
lights out.
he's like,
Lights out.
I've been knocking on doors my whole life, and his route's so dense and impressive. It's like, yeah, no, it shows. It shows up.
Lights out. Yeah.
But
Love me some LDS dudes.
yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
that's really our main focus is these small businesses. So I think, I would love to kick it over to your side for the data in terms of what do you think for main hires that you see day one to like day 6 months in to like 12 months in with you, whereas people start to kind of say, oh yeah, this is pretty cool.
Yep. So what I would say is, broadly speaking, because we work with, my bread and butter is small, like I like small business. I like high Main Street, lower middle market, right? That's generally speaking where I like to live. The super small guys, like remote cleaning bros, side hustles, that's not really my thing. But like above them, but below, like I need an investment banker if I sell my company. Like that's the range where, like, I don't know what that's called, but that's
Lower middle market, micro market, we'll call it. Yeah.
that's that. I don't know what the name
One to
is.
$3 million in EBITDA, maybe.
Yeah,
Searcher
yeah,
slash
like
lower middle market private
like
equity.
1 to 8, 1 to 10 is usually like, that's, we do bigger than that, we do smaller than that, but that's just, my heart is there. Yeah, kind of like Searcher. Yeah. So what I would say is, generally speaking, with companies of that size, in my opinion, there's really two main flavors. There's somebody who's salesy, and there's someone who's opsy. So, and in your industry, exactly what that's defined as is different. But we work with massage envies, a ton of massage envies. We have a salesy person who's based in Jamaica, and all they do is call their members who haven't been using their services and try to get them in the next day, because utilization rate is correlated to churn because they're on month-to-month membership contracts. That's all they do. In a power washing company, which we also work with a ton of, if they don't close on the first quote, all of those people end up in CRM, and the salesy person at that company goes, hey, Dennis, I know you're looking at that $1,400 driveway clean. I might be able to make a deal for you if you're willing to move forward today. And in a SaaS company, it's what, right? So there's a salesy version in these kind of lower middle market companies. And then there's a opsy person. So again, using those same examples, in the massage envy, it would be managing credit cards that are about to expire and texting people saying, hey, your credit cards, and that's
Coming
very
up.
opsy, right? In power washing, it's scheduling the crew. And in SaaS, it's project management on, roadmaps and kind of like keeping Asana up to date and the appropriate. So there's kind of like opsies and salesies, and what that. Oh, CRM is a great one for the ops people. Oh, Service Titan or HubSpot. That's an easy one, and all they do is
Yeah.
keep your HubSpot just cooking, right?
What do
So
you find is the
yeah.
hardest one to hire for? Like you have probably finance, social media, lead generation. It's probably all over the place, but
I mean, it's not like, it's really, it's correlated to salary, generally speaking, meaning the hard ones are, I need somebody who's basically like an investment banker who I'm going to pay, the Columbia equivalent of $400,000 a year, which is $5,000 a month in Columbia, but that is tippy top of the comp range in Columbia, just because there's less of those people. Right. So the other one that I would say is pretty common, that's kind of, it's not hard for the reason you think though, is if you're trying to have people do high volume outbound cold calling, that's a completely different flavor of medicine. it's doable. We do it all the time. I have a company that does that, but it is a different thing. Top of funnel outbounding is, there's different levels. We can have a whole conversation about lead gen. Is it B2B? Is it B2C? Is it homeowners? Is it like there's lots? Is it multi-channel? Is it single channel? Is it,
Yeah, there's levels.
so
There's levels to the cold outreach stuff. It gets pretty complicated in terms of that.
correct. Is
Yeah.
it a BDR? Is it a cold caller? Is it an AE? Is it B2B? Are they getting through gatekeepers? Like all that shit matters.
Are they using AI? Are they not using AI? Cold
Clay,
email.
are they going to build like all that? But everybody's just like more top of funnel. And you're like, I need to ask you like 7 more questions before I can tell you what the
Can
solution
open
is.
phone actually, register this phone number? Is going to kick it back to me 10 times. It's a fake number.
Correct.
Fun
There's just
stuff.
a lot. There's an art to it. It's totally solvable, but it's, there's an art.
All right. Well, we're almost done here. I guess one last question we had was, how do you deal with the different time zones? So we've done some hiring, overseas and have a remote team, but a lot of folks struggle with someone waking up in the Philippines versus over in maybe India and LATAM. Kind of how do you advise folks to think about where they're hiring and what hours those folks will work?
In the beginning, everybody works US time zone. So our whole team is 7 a.m. PST. Why is it based on that? Because that's where I live. Because I'm the boss, right? Over time, you might want to have just like some overlap just because you want to, like, oh yeah, you have to overlap and you only work till 11 a.m. It's not full overlap. Generally speaking, if it's stuff like video editors, you actually might want them working async so that they process that night's take while you're, but generally speaking, like I would not say, oh, I want overlap. So Latin America only. I think you're leaving a lot on the table because culturally, like I lived in Dubai and I built companies in the US and I just worked 2 p.m. to 10 p.m. and it was no big deal. Like whatever, who cares? Like, so I wouldn't say, like, people are adults. They make way more money by working for American companies. So they're willing to it's a job. Like
Yeah.
they're
They
happy as
show
a
up.
clam.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
for them, in that standpoint, how do you think about structuring their careers in terms of full-time and members of your team, right? Do you structure it in years, or do you do kind of 6 months to start and then a year? Kind of how do you think about onboarding folks, and then after that, I'm sure they're in a traditional management style progression.
Yeah.
But the initial onboarding phase, just given some folks might not be comfortable with remote hiring if they never meet the person in person, kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean, what I would say, broadly speaking, what you just said, I think is correct, Dennis, which is some of these issues that people have is with remote hiring, American or non-American. It's not. So the big X factor is, have you hired remotely before? If you haven't hired remotely before, then we have to talk about things like how to maintain accountability when you can't lean over and look at the person's desk. And there are a lot of companies who are not good enough managers and leaders to be able to do that, American or otherwise. So I can solve that, but you don't want me to solve that. Like if you need to put time trackers on your remote employees, right? You can't create a high performance remote culture. It doesn't matter if they're in Fort Lauderdale or Buenos Aires. Like
Yeah,
that's,
as you said, the boss is always driving the bus at the end of the day, so they really have
yeah.
to
So
kind of
it's like,
figure it
I
out.
consider
Yeah,
that a leadership issue.
right.
Like you need to have people in the office to maintain accountability. Weak leader. I don't
Yeah,
have any issues with that because I take leadership extremely seriously, and our whole team takes leadership extremely seriously. So it's not like I wonder what Dennis did today. It's like I know exactly what fucking Dennis did today because I'm a good leader. So what I would say is remote work, cross cultural work, just makes you more of whatever you are. So if you're a really soft leader and you rely on like looking physically at somebody, and then like every time you turn their back, they pull YouTube back up, that's going to happen when you hire globally. And if you're good in person and you're good remotely with Americans, you're going to be good when you hire people from South Africa. It's just, you just are.
Yeah, that just kind of it ends up just working out. I think to end here, we've done almost 30 minutes. We're going to do an event with John for those folks out there. We're going to do a placement day where John's going to give us his best people, and everyone's going to come join and see if we can make a really fun event out of it. So, John, love to hear you talk about that. Also, where they can find you, and then number 3, maybe finish with kind of where you think this remote world's going.
Yeah. So first, the idea of these live events is we have some kind of like meteor offerings once you've taken the first puff of the drug and you are addicted, but we also want to provide some entryway stuff. And the idea of these live hiring events is you can show up at absolutely zero cost. You're in a Zoom room. You're not on camera. We're going to basically take a bunch of vetted global talent and talk like this, like Dennis and I are talking. Hey, Dennis, tell me about you. Oh, I'm an expert in this, whatever. And you'll be able to, as a audience member, immediately book Dennis same day to do a one-on-one interview to talk about a role that you might have open, and you make a job offer the same day. And you don't pay unless you make a hire. So it's a great way for people who are just like, I don't even know if there's good enough people for this or whatever. You just show up. It doesn't cost anything. And you can be like, holy crap, Dennis is incredible. And what's his asking? Dude, I want to interview him right now. And so that's the idea, is that it happens in kind of like a low trust environment until you realize like, oh crap, these people can really help. So that's the idea of the live hiring event.
For those
Yeah.
that attend, I think with John's team, what they do, they do a really big deep dive with all their candidates. There's a lot of training, there's a lot of backups, a lot of resources these folks come with from John's team on how to go about it. As someone who's also done their fair share of remote hiring, that can be hard to build on your own, right? So, we've had to go back and build like standard procedures and things like that for training and things. So, that's part of the benefit of working with John's team. This is all they do all day is recruit. So they have a number of really good candidates. So hopefully we'll throw a good event. But John, just to finish, just love to hear, sorry to cut you off there, but the final part was just, where you think you can see remote teamwork going, just given how much has changed in the last 5 years.
I think that this is a mega trend, the globalization of white collar work. And I think that there are going to be an entire class of operators, whether they're searchers, funds, whatever, who are, and I work with some of them now, and there are going to be 100 times more, who are operating with a specific thesis, which is, I'm really good at building a white collar workforce, layering in AI and automation, and I can go buy things or do tuck-ins that nobody else can do because I'm really good at this, and I can build a global workforce and create better operating leverage, create better labor efficiency ratios. I can start a price war. I can serve my customers better. I can develop product lines that my competitors can't. All these great things, because just like the early adopters to the internet, the people who made or let's use refrigeration. That's the more classic example. The people who made the money weren't the guys who invented refrigeration. It was Coca-Cola. And Bezos made a lot of the money on the internet, not the ISPs, although ISPs is great business. But what I mean is, the global talent is, as a vendor, right? There's good money to be made. We're making great money, right? But the people I think who are going to make the real money, of which we sometimes do as well, is people who are directly applying this to the immigration industry and changing the way that the immigration industry works by using a global workforce, not just a bunch of people sitting in Manhattan charging $250,000 a year.
Right. It's really something to study. And thanks for everyone who listened in. For John, we'll put his contact details at the end of the pod, and it'll get up on YouTube and Spotify. But that's a review, and honestly, something to take a look at for those who are operating teams, funds, all of those things in that space that can help in a lot of different ways. So thanks, John, for taking the time, and see you soon.